Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM, and now for the bookie people, Ralph could not join us. Well, he did join us, but he was talking about his escapades at Premier House, wasn't he? Didn't get into the books, but we do have, for our book lovers, an author to join us today. John Ferguson, good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning, John. Good to be here.
Lovely to talk to you. I understand you know the Manawatu quite well.
Yeah, I lived in Palmerston North for 3 years, in a former lifetime when I was a young man.
Well, a young man, indeed, and doing some work there with Massey. And these days, it seems to me, you're living in Auckland, but you seem to be a citizen of the world.
My wife and I have lived in many countries. We've traveled around organizing big campaigns in places like Brazil and Argentina and Indonesia, Jamaica and India. So yes, we've had an amazing life.
And how's it been in recent months where you must feel as if your wings have been well and truly clipped?
Yep. Fortunately, we've got a large garden which requires attention, so that's kept us out of mischief.
And I suppose you could always write another book, couldn't you?
I've been doing that. Yes.
Oh, good on you. Wonderful. I wonder if we can talk about King Solomon's deadly legacy and also ask you if Israel is part of your travel itinerary. Have you been to Israel?
Yeah, that was one of the highlights, actually, of doing all the research. I spent 5 years on research for this book. And the highlight for me was traveling to Israel twice, because I felt I couldn't write about King Solomon without actually knowing where he lived and walking on the paths and visiting the places that were important to him. And it was an amazing experience.
I haven't been to Israel, but I know what you mean. When you walk on historic places, you can almost feel the vibration, and it becomes much more alive and much more colourful, quite vivid on occasions. Do you agree?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and as you say, there's something special about actually being there. And Israel, for me, I mean, has always been a special place. And the thing which surprised me were two things that surprised me. Firstly, that you hear of all the trouble, but actually you felt a real sense of peace. You never felt threatened or in danger. And the other thing was the welcome of the local people. They were amazingly welcoming. Couldn't have been kinder. So all of that was just added extra blessing.
And was that the Israeli people as well as the Palestinian people? Yeah,
I mean, that's right. I did actually go across into Bethlehem, which was in the on the West Bank now,
yes.
So that was. They were also amazingly friendly. It's just that they're not friendly to each other, which is such a shame.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
It's such an intractable problem, that one. But let's talk about King Solomon's deadly legacy, which has got a touch of the Dan Brown about it, if you don't mind my saying. And I love Dan Brown. But it's also got time travel. So this is a very interesting connection between the past, the future, the present. How on earth did you come across this concept?
Well, first of all, I've always loved time travel books. Even when I was young, I didn't read much. If I got into a time travel book, I was transported, if you pardon the pun.
Well, I know, yes, precisely. It's a very good word.
But, so that was the first thing. And also, I wanted to draw the parallel between what was going on in Solomon's life and the parallel of what's going on in our cultures, Western culture today. And I suddenly realized, hey, Solomon was amazing. He was, at the beginning of his life, he was a young man. He was in love with God. He was an amazingly clever administrator and had this legendary wisdom. And then towards the end of his life, he was depressed. He was writing Ecclesiastes, which has got some very strange passages.
Yes.
He was idolatrous. He was building temples for his wife's idols. and even worshipping the idols. And you kind of think, what went wrong? You know, how did all of that happen? And when you start to look at it, you realize that he actually got distracted by the things which are distracting us today. I mean, in a nutshell, it's gold, girls, and glory. Those are the things that took him away from his early love of God and his early wisdom.
Yes, and the wisdom of Solomon is literally a phrase which we've grown up with. So he lost the wisdom to a certain extent.
Well, I think he did, and when you sort of look at his life in detail, I've always been fascinated by that question. You know, what went wrong, and then I've also it's concerned me that since the two world wars, our generation, in 2 generations, we seem to have sliding down the same slippery slope of losing our morality, losing our security, chasing after the wrong things like money, and then I realized, well, the dangers. What happened to Israel after Solomon died? You know, then Israel divided. The next thing is that Egypt invaded, and then of course that led them on the slippery slope to exile. And so I thought, I wonder if the same thing isn't actually also an issue for us, which is why I've called this Deadly Legacy. It's something that it's a sort of a bit of a heads up. And of course, nobody needs to be told nowadays that the world is in trouble.
No doubt about that. Did the society that Solomon led lose religion as well as Solomon himself? To the extent, I wonder if the parallel can be drawn with today, where, frankly, the churches are becoming irrelevant to much of society.
Yeah, well, that's also true, and it's a fascinating thing that when you study the influence of the leaders at that time, you know, when a leader was godly, the society followed the Lord. When leaders were ungodly, and they followed the leader, and so leadership, the power of leadership is important. But you're right. I mean, so the society generally at that time was falling away, and just doing what they wanted to do, doing their own thing, and that's. I think you could say the same thing has been happening.
Well,
so,
as they say, ignore history at your peril. You're almost
exactly. Well, one of the phrases
you're condemned to repeat. However, John, so that is the basis for your story, and you've obviously put an enormous amount of research into it. Have you come to any conclusions through the writing of the book?
Conclusions. Yeah, I personally feel it's a heads up for all of us that we need to walk back into our heritage, which is godly values, and instead of all trying to do our own thing and rejecting God. One of the phrases I've put in the book is that, you know, we all want the money and the power without the God of money and power. We want to do it all our own way, and it doesn't work.
It's been very interesting in recent weeks in New Zealand, where we were forced into a simpler lifestyle, and I think many people enjoyed it. Do you think that we may have lived through a possible turning point in this country?
Yes, I do, very much, and it is interesting that you say that. I mean, we were at home and content, you know. We were actually enjoying the lockdown, and I know it was hard for some people, especially if they've lost jobs or, you know, been separated from families and stuff. But no, I agree. I think it's been a wake-up call and enabling people to have a bit of a sort of reality check and revise priorities, and it's got to be good.
Well, I think there's something to be said for the simple life. But congratulations on your book, John, King Solomon's Deadly Legacy. I believe it's out now. It's action-packed, it's historical, it's time travel, it's got a lot going, and it's a real page-turner. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time here on Beach FM.
Thanks, John. Bless you.
106.3 Beach FM.